Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Samson. One of the things that happened in this run was Curse of the Blind, and Curse of the Blind is a curse that I don't think anybody likes. I don't think anybody likes any curse, to be honest, but Curse of the Blind obviously is one of those curses that just makes it more tedious. It doesn't make it necessarily harder, it just makes it maybe more annoying to traverse, and what it does remove your mat, which is usually pretty useful. Of course, you do lose that strategic value of seeing where the secret rooms are, but once you get maybe accustomed or maybe a bit adept at the game, you will know instinctively which rooms can contain a secret room or maybe a second secret room, and you will know to place the bomb there. So even in that sense, it's maybe not that big of a deal. But the thing that maybe bothers me the most, bothers me in quotation marks, is that the Curse of the Lost also adds more rooms to the whole floor generation. So let's say the first floor had something like 5 rooms, maybe it would get 2 additional rooms because of that. And I think that every time you get the Curse of the Blind, depending on which floor you are on, the later you are on in the game, the more rooms will actually get added to that floor, which means that it gets proportionally bigger and bigger. And because this is a hard mode run, the floors are already pretty big, so you can see that this floor had something like 15 rooms, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but this didn't even have Curse of the Blind on it. But in this particular daily run, I think 6 out of the 8 floors that we encountered had Curse of the Blind, which means that the exploration bonus was first of all insane if you decide to go to all of those rooms, but also it was quite hard to miss some of those just because they're kind of tucked away in a corner somewhere and you would really need to take a lot of time to explore every single nook and cranny. So it does take more into the account how well you can remember where you were or maybe where to go. And because this game is rather 4-dimensional in some sense, because you can only go left, right, top or bottom, it means that your spatial awareness doesn't have to be that good to realize where you're going or where you have to go. Of course, some people have more problem with that, some people don't. Me personally, I can't remember where I was or where I'm going for the life of me, but I can navigate at least to some extent, remember some of the rooms, and I know in the general direction where I'm going. So it's not maybe that big of a deal for me, but I do imagine that if you maybe have some disability in some sort, or maybe you just don't remember well where you were or where you're going, this can really mess up with your perception of where you are. So that's kind of annoying, but like most curses, it's annoying, but at least it's circumventable. But in this particular case, because these are daily runs and because there were 6 out of 8, it means that it becomes highly unlikely for you to even get to boss rush or harsh. It does delay you so much because you have to either decide that you're going to start skipping rooms very early on and then you're missing out on that potential exploration bonus, but also it means that you have a chance to miss out on maybe some good items or some good consumables, which can really save your run. So let's just take an example here. I got Cracked Crown in one of the rooms that I explored, and someone else might have not actually gotten to that room. I'm not really sure where I got it, maybe it was on the path to the boss, but let's say it was tucked away in some corner and you really had to explore the whole floor to get it, or just maybe get lucky. If someone didn't find Cracked Crown, they would be in a much worse position, and I think that they wouldn't have a good chance of actually going anywhere, because not only would they have significantly less DPS, also their speed would be pretty bad, which means again they would be taking more damage because of that, and also they will be just traversing much slower to the whole floor, and when you have a lot of the rooms, your speed actually plays a very big part in just exploration. And some people have mentioned, or at least have proposed the idea, to add an item into the game which makes you move very fast when you've actually entered an unexplored room. So I think that's a very neat idea, because that would make it so that you can have this item and then you essentially backtracking becomes a lot easier. Games like Gungeon already solved that to some extent because we have the teleporters, and naturally the floors there are bigger, but you know how tedious it can be in Isaac, especially sometimes when you explore one half of the floor and then you have to get to the other side and you have to go through like 30 rooms, and it just becomes a mess very fast. And the ability to kind of have or go faster backwards and traverse, I think would really put a better spin on the whole things. I was thinking maybe your time decay, or so to say your time could tick slower when you're in already explored room. So let's say that instead of 1 per second, you would actually gain 1 per 2 seconds. I think that would be a very neat change in some extent. It wouldn't change too much, but it would allow players to actually take some time to maybe break the game, to play the restock machines, or maybe to reroll for a bit faster. If you're still rushing and trying to get at the boss, nothing really changes, because being in a room where you're just going from room to room, just killing enemies, you're basically the same. So maybe there's some idea that you can toy around with there, but obviously because of how the timers work and the dailies, this is something or a change that the developers would have to implement, so we don't really have much control over that, at least not in that sense. Maybe we could make something like custom daily leaderboards, and we would maybe create a competitive mod, so to say, and that competitive mod would then send information to the server somewhere, and then maybe we could host that somewhere. I think that would be a neat idea, because then that means that whoever would officially have that mod, and if they didn't change it, that would be kind of hard to check, but I think it could be done. If people did have unofficially that mod, then we would be able to make our own changes to the game, our own changes to the daily run, so to say, and I think that could be quite fun, but obviously it does seem like quite a big project, and a lot of people would have to come together to actually make it reality. I'm not even certain if it's possible at this point. Maybe some of the properties or features that I'm thinking about just aren't implemented yet, or maybe we can do it, but at least as a maybe thought process or thought experiment, if someone would be willing to do that, I would definitely be willing to help with the coding and maybe changing some of the base stats or game around to make it a bit more suitable for competitive play. But ignoring that, let's focus on this run. So it was one of those runs that I mentioned before. It started off very slow, of course. With Curse of the Blind, you're not seeing where you're going. Maybe you miss out on some potential shops or rooms or secret rooms or whatever. But later on, it does open up, and I did get some of those items which kind of break the game. I did get a lot of Tears upgrades, which is usually good, but of course, picking up Mem's Knife kind of circumvents that. I really like playing runs where you shoot fast, because it makes me feel like powerful, it makes me feel like I'm actually doing something. But when you have Mom's Knife, I don't think your tear rate actually synergizes with it, or maybe if it does, it's not that noticeable of a difference. And in this case, because we have Mom's Knife, obviously we have a lot of damage, but maybe the MVP of this particular run would be Dull Razor. And I never had a lot of appreciation for Dull Razor, because mostly when it shows up, I really can't use it, or at least if I do use it, it doesn't have that much of an effect. But in this particular case, it did allow me to get to Hushing Time, and it made such a big difference, because every time I used it, not only did I get a random consumable, or at least had a chance to get a random consumable from my fanny pack, but I also triggered my own internal rage that Samson has, so whenever you get hit, your damage gets increased. And that's obviously really good, because you can do it every 2 rooms, or if it's a big room, you can do it every room, or maybe even in Boss Rush, if you manage to do that, you can trigger that like 6 times and you're already maxed out at the cap. With Lusty Blood and Bloody Lust, when you combine both of those items, you actually get a ridiculous amount of damage at the end. I think I was at something like 21 damage when I actually killed and triggered myself fully. And remember, that 21 damage just comes from 2 items, which admittedly have to be triggered, have a lot of prerequisites, but if you can actually get them going, they're really powerful. So I never felt like I was stranded for damage in this run. It was maybe more of a problem that I didn't feel like I could take advantage of the items I have, at least early on, until I got the Dull Razor, and then things went a bit more smoothly. Of course, because of how this run turned out, I did miss Boss Rush in the end. I did try to make it. I think it was very close, like maybe 20-30 seconds off, but I definitely feel like if I just, at some point in the run, I decided, I should make like a rush for Boss Rush, I would have definitely able to make it. But I made a decision on like the one floor before Mom, and because of that, I was kind of late already for it. But I really felt like I could do it because of the damage that you gain by just having these 2 items and the delay that we had. And luckily, we even had Scorpio from the Zodiac, so we're dealing some more DPS with poison damage. And that turned out really well, but sadly, I just wasn't able to make it. At least that gave us enough time to go and explore the rest of the floor. And maybe what's the biggest kick in the teeth was that when I killed Mom, I got Mom's Knife, and obviously Mom's Knife would have made the Boss Rush trivial, and would be actually able to just kill it immediately, and that would be it. But I do wonder that if I did beat Boss Rush and just kill those, would I have enough time to actually make it to Hush later on? Because as it was now, I think I entered Hush at exactly 30 minutes or very close to 30 minutes, and obviously if I had to do Boss Rush as well, that would mean that I would be already 3 minutes late. And just because of the size of the floors, I think it would be quite difficult. It would definitely be doable. I'm not saying it would be impossible, but I definitely think there's some merits that would make it a bit harder to achieve than I originally thought. But even though that I didn't make it to Boss Rush, and even though I took quite a bit of damage penalty, even with Dull Razor, which I really have no excuse for, I just kind of mistimed it sometimes, we still ended up with 42,000 points, which is not that great, but our end rank is 34th, and I think we were like top 20 in the leaderboards, which is just great, because that means that even though this is a particularly bad run, even if you have a bad run yourself, that means you're not that far behind, because everybody had this bad run. And the Curse of the Blind, that did make it a bit tedious, but personally I don't mind it as much as something like Curse of the Darkness. And maybe the happiest news of this all is that Greedbots, the all-time leaderboards, got changed to actually take into account the whole past 2 months, and previously it only took a month, and when that change happened I was kind of distraught, because I just had a few bad dailies, and that really tanked my overall score, so I dropped out from the top 100. But now with the introduction of the last 60 days, I'm actually back on the top 100 leaderboards. I think I'm at 85th place at the time of speaking, maybe even a bit higher after this update takes effect. So that's really good. I'm back in the top 100, and that's really exciting to me. I'm not really sure why I take so much pride in being in the top 100, because I don't think it means anything. Dailies in Isaac are very specific game category, which doesn't nearly correlate to skill in the game at all, because you can see that I'm not that good of a maybe mechanically good player. I do take a lot of damage and I still manage to rank quite well. It's just maybe about taking other factors into balance, and it's just about abusing the score system, which I don't necessarily think that it's bad, but it is what it is. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.